to not drink to help their health. That's called an abstainer bias. And those patients who don't drink now get lumped in with the patients that never drink. And when you can separate those, you actually find that the never drinkers have the best health outcomes across the board. And that it's that the zero drinkers currently, the reason why drinking 1 drink a day looks better than 0 is because the people that drink 0 had some health harm come to them from their drinking, and that's why they no longer drink. It's called the abstainer bias. The big study that finally proved that definitively came out a year ago, published in JAMA, which is a big medical journal.
We have a caller on the line today. Good morning, caller. You're at the table. Thank you for joining us. You have a question for us?
Yes. Thank you for taking my call.
We can barely hear you. We can barely hear you.
Speaker. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Barely, but yes.
Okay. The last question that you answered. Do you have 1 drink or 0? Well, I don't drink. I used to in my younger day, but even in my younger day, I couldn't drink over 3 drinks. It just made me nasally, or it was like I got congested. So I just stopped drinking. And I think, to say if it's senior bias, I don't know if that's fair or not, or you stopped drinking because you had problems earlier in life. But I have another question, like when you plan an event, even for a repast, and you want to have it at a hall, normally it makes the room cheaper when you have an open bar to save you money. But at the same token, I don't know if they do like mixed drink, different mixed drinks, like maybe non-alcoholic or 1 or 2 wines, and that's it. But anytime we have affairs at our home, we would never have alcohol.
Yeah.
It'd be all kind of sodas and things like that you could drink. Now, if you want to do something different, after you leave, you go do whatever you want to. I think it keeps down problems. But our society encourages drinking.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And even in the park, you have a picnic, someone's got to bring the beer.
Yeah, somebody's responsible.
Yeah.
And when you drink in the heat of the day, that alcohol affects you differently. I've had some people tell me that when you're drinking and you're out, it intensifies or something.
Yeah, it affects doesn't it affect like the temperature of the body? And
Your ability to regulate your body temperature is affected by alcohol. So that's a big problem, especially in the wintertime. Because people they'll be ice fishing or something and they'll be drinking and they don't realize how cold they are. Then you frostbite.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Deb, you had something you wanted to say.
Listening to me,
No, thank you for calling in and sitting at the table with us. We appreciate
all
it.
right.
Anybody else that wants to call in at the table, you can call in at 414-444-5250. Deb, you had something for us.
Yes, I was going to ask Dr. LeConte to speak to the cancers. There's 5, I think I wrote down. There's several cancers that that alcohol puts you at a higher risk, and wondering if you could speak to those.
Yeah. So it depends exactly on how you categorize them, but we lumped 3 of them together. So larynx, pharynx, and mouth. We call that head and neck. Liver cancer, colorectal cancer, which is rising in young people, and we can definitely talk about if alcohol is part of that why. Breast cancer. And then in Canada, they've already added stomach cancer, and they've also added pancreas cancer. And then we also have a type of esophageal cancer, which is the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. So a lot of GI cancers, which is what I treat.
Yeah, I was going to mention that's your specialty, are the GI cancers. And so you do see between liver, pancreatic, stomach, colon, and intestinal cancers. With that being your specialty, it's understood that this would be something of concern to you.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard to see these cancers. It just tears families apart. It's about 5 to 6% of all cancers that are alcohol associated.
Definitely.
So 5 or 6%, but that percentage, when you see that, the can you explain, like, those that have cancer, what is their experience like if they drink or if they don't drink? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And I should say most of the people that have alcohol-associated cancers are not alcoholics. I think that's a common myth too, is, oh, I have to be an alcoholic to have harm, but that's not true in the cancer space. But what we know about alcohol and cancer treatment is that it complicates pretty much every step of the way. Surgery, it takes longer, the recovery is harder, their length of stay in the hospital is longer, their chance of needing to be re-hospitalized is higher. It makes radiation complications more likely. It may make wound healing harder from surgery. And for chemotherapy, it appears as though their rates of recurrence of their cancer is higher, so it may dampen the effectiveness of chemo. And then Dr. Izzard knows this as well as I do, that chronic alcohol use affects your immune system. Patients that are high alcohol users have a lot more infections. And it looks like they may not respond to immunotherapy, which is a newer type of cancer treatment as well for the same reason.
Can you go into detail about this new treatment that you just mentioned?
CAR-T.
Yeah, so immunotherapy, the most common one that people may have heard of is Keytruda. That was the first one on the market. It's intravenous medication meant to ramp up your own immune system to fight off the cancer.
And how often do people have to go through that therapy or treatment, I
It's
should
the
say?
standard of care right now for types of skin cancer and lung cancer, some bladder and kidney cancers as well. And then it has an emerging role in all the other cancers. So I would say in my practice, in the last 20 years, it's been the most instrumental and important change in cancer management.
And Dr. LeConte, isn't Keytruda or this new immunotherapy treatment, isn't it more, it gets us closer to like precision medicine for each patient?
Yeah, I mean, what it gets us closer to, Deb, really is a cure.
Yep.
It's the only
Yes.
treatment I have as a medical oncologist that can eradicate the tumor without surgery.
Awesome.
Wow.
You'd really want every patient to have equal likelihood of benefit.
Can you
Yeah.
just explain a little bit more about eradicate surgery? Explain that to us, because we have people in layman terms, because I'm just,
Yeah.
because I mean, like, we need to break it down because this is so important. And I'm not a physician. I have my master's in health
Yeah.
services administration, but I'm not a physician. And so a lot of people, when they're hearing this, they don't really comprehend and know exactly what you mean by that. But what you said is
Right.
so important for
It
people
is.
to
It
know
is.
that I want to make sure they get it.
Yeah. And don't let me forget, I did do I published all of us research on alcohol and cancer too. So we
I've
should
been
talk about
reading
that,
too.
'cause
Yes,
know
I
that's
want
part
you
of
definitely to talk
why
about
we're
it.
here.
Most definitely. I already
Yeah.
pulled it out. Yes.
Yeah. But so the immunotherapy. So this will come as no surprise. So the tools we use for cancer are pretty coarse, meaning used to be chemotherapy just killed every fast growing cell in your body. It didn't care whether it was a cancer cell or your hair follicles or the lining of your gut. And that's why you get the side effects you get. For years, we've been trying to understand how to better use our own bodies to treat our cancer. And our own bodies have an immune system that identifies aberrant cells and says, oh, this is not a good cell, we should kill it. But for reasons we don't understand, cancer evades that surveillance system that's built in. So with immunotherapy, we kind of push the gas pedal on our own immune system to identify cancer cells better. And so your own body attacks and kills those cancer cells. And then what happens is over time, we don't see any more cancer on your scans. And we treat you usually for 1 to 2 years, and then we watch you. So in a tumor where we would normally need surgery, radiation, for what I treat, ostomies, we can avoid all of that in the right patient. As Deb said, there's features of the tumor, the patient that we have to consider. Immunotherapy is not the right treatment for every patient, but where we can use it, we always try to use it.
Reading, doctor, it has been, said and known that a lot of times we might have a cancer cell in our body and our good cells will push that away. But sometimes what happens is that if the body can't fight it off or you get too many of them, then they start, replicating. And can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So our own bodies make cancer cells all the time. And most of the time, our body is able to correctly see those and kill them. Cancer cells fundamentally are cells that are immortal. They've lost the ability to die, and that's why they grow and grow and grow and spread. And we don't exactly understand why certain cancer cells can avoid our own immune surveillance, but they can. And so then one cell becomes 2, becomes 4, so on. And that's how eventually you get to be the size of a tumor. We think that a visible tumor on a scan has about 3 million cancer cells in it. That's the point at which we can detect it.
Now, there are some tumors that are not cancerous too, right, doctor?
Yeah, you can have benign growth lesions. And this is part of the problem with language is you see a doctor, one doctor says you have a spot on your lungs, one says you have a tumor on your lungs, one says you have cancer on your lungs, and the impreciseness of the language can be very hard for patients to understand what they're dealing with.
We have a caller on the line this morning. Welcome, caller. You're at the table.
Hello. Oh, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. I was listening to your conversation, and it's very interesting to me because I have dealt with it, not me, but within, home and stuff. And it is so serious. It's more serious than you think. I know you know because you deal with it. But, it gets to the point you get liver damage, you get kidney damage, you get brain damage. And it's such a fight. And then years ago, they used to, now I read where money is cut from the services for a lot of this stuff, the CDC and all that stuff. But years ago, they used to have a DePaul that people that was addicted could go, and they could dry out for 3 months. Now, a lot of money is shifted away. So they send you to the meetings and, they put you in the hospital to fail in your health. And then they send you to the meetings, but health operation is not there. Go to the meeting. And so I just sit here and I says, well, it's so horrible. Like when they started gutting out our city, they started putting a lot of alcohol stores. And then you got service stations. Then you got grocery stores that left. Then you got the hospitals that want to leave. And it seems like a big death trap. If you start watching documentaries, I was looking at the documentary on Dayton, Ohio. And I have people over there. Very, prosperous people. Prosperous people that was in the civil rights fight. And now you look at the place over there, they're showing you the boarded up houses, the empty houses, how everything left. And when you look at it, it was all systemically done. It started when Clinton signed that NAFTA Act. All the jobs started rolling out of the United States and stuff like that. And then Reagan took the funding, started taking the funding away from the healthcare and stuff. And so, they steady do this stuff, and I don't think we, the people, really read about it. And even Donald Trump, he's doing the same thing. They started cutting all this stuff. The help that's needed people can get. And then I live exactly in the central city. I get to watch the death and the destruction. I get to watch women, that look so bad that they're old before they are old. And I says, how did this happen? And I talked to them. I tried to talk to them. But it is more serious than we think. And if you don't live it, you don't see it. It seems like the people that's doing better, that live in the suburbs, they don't care. They get everything they want. But we get in the city here, all the money gets deducted. They say they don't have enough money, but they have a surplus.
Okay, thank you, caller, for sitting at the table with us. Deb, you want to respond to her?
Yeah, I think what the caller is talking about, and it's something that we're all seeing. They're social, SDOH, or social drivers, or social determinants of health. And when you look at the health of an individual, and I think Dr. LeConte definitely approaches her care for her patients this way, you don't just see the illness. You don't just see that the patient needs treatment. You take into consideration all of the aspects that patient may be dealing with. So in order to make sure that a patient can succeed in treatment, you need to understand what their support system looks like. What are their resources? And so a lot of that we wrap around at the cancer centers here in Wisconsin, we wrap around navigation and social workers. I totally agree with the caller and understanding mental health services, hands down, everyone would agree. There's been a lot of funding that's been diverted from that. We have a lack of mental health providers in communities. And so that is one place where there is definitely a deficit. And you pile on top of that a diagnosis of cancer or any chronic illnesses, and it just makes things elevate, because if you don't have the right mindset when you go into treatment, it does impact your outcomes because you become depressed. You don't do the things that would normally help you, and especially like we were talking about with drinking, we think that drinking, okay, I'll feel better if I just have a drink. It doesn't. It depresses you more. But understanding, and I think getting communities to understand that the illness or chronic illness, as this caller was talking about, in the family, one person who can be impacted by alcohol or cancer diagnosis or anything like that impacts the entire family,
Yes.
which impacts that community.
Mhm.
It's one person who is not able to contribute in ways that they were able to before. And so understanding that your voice matters and being able to speak up and talk about the fact that we need more mental health services. We need to understand what policies impact cancer services. Part of what the caller was speaking about was funding. I've worked with, taking off my medical college hat completely right now.
Mhm.
I also am a volunteer in Gwen Moore's district for ACS CAN, the Cancer Action Network. We advocate for continued and increased funding for things like the Well Woman program. We advocate for continued and increased funding for NCI, for the research that Dr. LaConte and others like her do. And so understanding that your voice matters, and these are the people that the volunteers that I work with are individuals who are cancer survivors, who are caregivers of cancer patients, the cancer co-survivors, so the spouses or anyone who may have been a partner to someone as they went through their diagnosis and possibly lost their battle. Individuals who are just at the table, who have a perspective and can bring that perspective to the table, can make a difference. And so the things that the caller was mentioning, such as mental health services, we advocate from a cancer center perspective. Again, the cancer centers in Wisconsin, we advocate for a comprehensive, holistic approach to not just looking at the diagnosis but also looking at the entire patient. And part of the work that Dr. LaConte does in palliative care, that's critical. Palliative care does not mean that we're stopping treatment. Palliative care means that from the day one, when you get that diagnosis, we can we consider you a cancer survivor. And so from the very beginning, you should not be in pain. You should, it doesn't mean that the medicine's working better because you're in tons of pain. No, you talk to your doctor and your doctor works with you to make sure that you're not in pain. But if we don't have the research, if we don't participate in the research, such as the All of Us Project, such as the projects that Dr. LaConte does, we're not at that table either. And so it's important that diverse voices are heard when we go to speak with legislators, but it's also important that diverse individuals are participating in research such as clinical trials.
Dr. LaConte, would you like to respond?
Yeah, Deb is so good. I wish I could just record her and replay her all the time. The one thing I wanted to touch on related to mental health that I don't think we've talked about yet is the types of recovery approaches. And, for years it was just AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, one size fits all. Either you run the program or you don't. And, if you don't, you're choosing to be an alcoholic kind of thing, which is really victim blamey to start with. But AA was started by white men, and it really may not be the right approach for everybody. There's a really great book called Quit Like a Woman, which goes into why AA was not a good fit for this woman. But it may not be a good fit for a number of people for a number of reasons. And I think we've realized harm reduction is a reasonable strategy here. But to do harm reduction, you have to have access to qualified doctors that treat substance use. It's complicated. There's lots of medical treatments and approaches. There's lots of things to take into consideration, including medical diagnoses and harms related to prior drinking. And a lot of people, there's no capacity in health systems to refer lots of patients, or they don't know who to refer to, or the insurance doesn't cover it. You know, there's just barrier after barrier after barrier. And, you know, you contrast that with how easy we just said it is to get a beer. You know, quitting is hard to do, and we need to support people through that in whatever way is best for them. And we need to really underscore the wins, which may not just be full sobriety for everybody all the time. It may be reducing the amount that you drink, but not fully quitting. So that was my one sidebar thought there. But I completely agree with Deb that, you know, the more voices at the table in these trials, the better we will get in caring for all patients. It's critically and vitally important.
Dr. LeConte, you mentioned that some of your patients, they continue to drink. How do you handle that with them?
Mm-hmm.
Do you look at the amount that they drink, and does that determine the types of medications that you would provide to them?
Yeah, I just try to have an open line of communication. So first thing is, most doctors aren't even asking about alcohol use. So normalizing that alcohol consumption is part of what we want to know about is people helping you be as healthy as possible. So I ask about it pretty frequently, especially in patients that have flagged that they have high alcohol consumption. I don't get shocked at any number anymore, because when your doctor acts surprised or shocked, that can be very stigmatizing to a patient. And so whatever that number is, no judgment. That's where we're starting from. Let's just figure out a plan moving forward. I try to assess how interested they are in reducing or cutting down. I think, as Dr. Izzard said earlier in the call, if the patient doesn't want to cut down, it doesn't matter how much the doctor wants it for them. So trying to understand how much they want to. And then talking through what are the options for getting them to reduce or get help to start thinking about reduction. Alcohol is one type of substance where you can die from alcohol withdrawal, so we do need to do it carefully. I think a prior caller had talked about being hospitalized for detox, which is commonly done because it has to be carefully monitored. Once people are safely through that, then we can talk about things like gabapentin, which may cut the craving but may help with some of the nerve damage side effects from chemotherapy, or some of these new GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic seem to cut down cravings considerably for alcohol. These are all conversations I have with the patient's primary care doctor, who's really the lead doctor in charge of their health. But we try to come up with a plan together and then reinforce that plan with the patient and understand and set the expectation that there will be places where people relapse or fall down. That's normal. That's expected. That doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means we have to keep trying.
I like that approach. And because you're an oncologist, so you specialize in cancer. And then having that communication with the person's primary physician, that would be like a Dr. Kevin Izzard and you having conversations to really develop a plan for that individual. Can you speak to that?
I think primary care doctors, especially as subspecialists, we are not good about looping them in and having conversations with them, but they really know these patients much, much, much better than I ever will as a subspecialist. And it's critical that the whole team is in agreement about the approach. They often have elements of the history that I don't have that are really important to consider. So yeah, I'm a big fan of everybody having a primary care doctor, first of all, but subspecialists working with primary care for the best treatment plan.
Thank you. We're going to continue our conversation after the break with Dr. LeConte. This is Karen Dotson from the All of Us Research Program, and we also have Deb Nevels here, also from the Medical College of Wisconsin for Cancer Prevention. We're going to ask if you have questions, please call in at 414-444-5250 and join us at the table. We'll see you back.
Garfield's 502 Rhythm and Blues Festival.
back to sitting at the table this morning. I'm Karen Dodson from the All of Us Research Program at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and I have along with me Deb Nevels from the Medical College as well in cancer prevention. And Deb, we have a special guest with us today.
We do. We are so lucky. Dr. Noelle LeConte from UW Health, and she is a professor in the Division of Hematology, Medical Oncology, and Palliative Care, working at Carbone Cancer Center up in Madison.
And Dr. LeConte, we want to thank you for joining us this morning and all the work that you have been doing. And we're going to also talk about the All of Us Research program, I should say, the project or the research that you've been doing with that. But before that, we do have a caller on the line that we want to join at the table with us. Good morning, caller. You at the table?
Thank you. Good morning, Miss Karen.
Good morning.
And good morning to all the special doctors and the special guests from Madison as well. Thanks for joining us here in Milwaukee today. Good morning, Mr. Debo. Good morning, Milwaukee. Tyrone W. speaking. Couple different things here. I want to jump back. I may be a little bit late on it there, but I heard you talking about the cancer and the drinking and all. But as a veteran myself, I don't smoke. I did my share, and I do still do some red wine occasionally, and something like that. There may be a beer, but I don't do it like I used to. Not really have been a heavy drinker overall, but still like to engage in. But Dr. Izzard was right. You don't have to have fun to be intoxicated. I learned that a little bit later than I did sooner. But I was wondering if any of you could touch on the military aspect of it, because a veteran myself, and then the American Surgeon General. I don't know if they do it so much now, but even when I was in, they was even after running in some, and they would take, light them up or smoke them if you got them. I mean, why are you encouraging that when these gentlemen and these ladies have to be healthy, on the battlefield, and so light them up if you got them, and then when the weekend comes, they leave the base and go out and party, and drink like a fish. So I'll leave it there. I mean, it's just. Even the movies, light them up, smoke them if you got them, So I don't know if the Surgeon General is aware of that, and if that's something they've got to cut back on, because if these people have to be healthy, that's the last thing they should be doing is, smoking them if they've got them, and even if they don't got them, they shouldn't have them. So I'll leave it there, but thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. LeConte, can you respond to the caller this morning?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of thoughts. And I hear what he's saying. My brother's in the Army, and I think this is a very real concern and issue, is health behaviors while you're in service. I think the VA has really outstanding mental health support for veterans, including substance use support. So I think that's a model we can all look to. They do it probably better than any other health system in the country. They screen all their patients as well in a much better and systematic way. But the caller was asking about how do we get at the root of when people start drinking, which we know that if you drink heavily as a young adult, you're more likely to drink heavily as an older adult. So I think some targeted outreach directly to enlisted men and women makes a lot of sense to me. I think a lot of when you're in the field or you're deployed, it's just trying to get through it. But could we possibly do something more before deployment or after deployment? I think it's a really excellent point.
Okay. The other thing, Dr. LeConte, you mentioned as far as you have done some research with the All of Us Research Programs database. Can you provide us information related to that? I'm excited to hear and share that with the community. Aren't you, Deb?
I am. It's always fascinating. That's so cool.
Yeah. So, All of Us is critically important, something we could all potentially look into even today and participating in. But it's a United States cohort linked with your electronic health record, extremely powerful data set. We looked at all the people in that data set who had a history of cancer. That was just over 15,000 people. And then those that were linked with their electronic health record was just over 1,800. And we wanted to ask how many patients undergoing cancer treatment, whatever that looks like, were drinking during treatment, thinking it would be quite low. chemotherapy, surgery, these things can affect your ability to drink alcohol or enjoy alcohol. Things taste bad, plus the cost. There's a lot of financial toxicity when people are on treatment where they may not be able to afford things like alcohol. So we thought we would find that it was lower than non-cancer patients. What we found was the opposite, that about 75% of people continued to drink through treatment, and 38% were engaged in hazardous drinking, which is either heavy drinking or binge drinking or both, which is really high, really high. We then broke it down by certain characteristics, gender, age, race, type of cancer. We found that Black patients were less likely to be engaged in hazardous drinking. So that's an interesting point we can talk about further. And patients that were smoking were much more likely to be drinking through cancer treatment. So again, it presents an opportunity for us to do outreach to targeted patients, kind of personalizing our approach to alcohol consumption. But yeah, 75% of patients continue to drink through treatment.
When you mention about the Black patients, can you elaborate more on that for our listeners?
Yes. So if you just ask the question, are Black patients more likely or less likely to be drinking alcohol? They're less likely. But when you look at things like harms from alcohol, Black patients suffer more harms, more organ damage, more hospitalizations, more surgeries. We do not understand why. The other thing that we see is that Black patients have a harder time accessing recovery services. That's probably an insurance issue, but we don't know exactly for sure. So in our study, we just said, whatever your race is, were you less likely or more likely to be drinking during treatment? And Black patients were less likely to be drinking. I don't know why.
And I wanted to also mention too that from the All of Us database, these individuals were self-identified. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Exactly right.
So that means that in the survey, when people are taking it, it asked about, your behaviors with drinking and smoking. And so these people actually identified that, yes, I am a drinker. I drink maybe 1 or 2 drinks a week, or how many they drink. And from those individuals, then she was able to pull from that database information related to those individuals that are, suffering with cancer. Or experiencing cancer in some capacity, because we're hoping that they aren't always suffering with it. And from that, you were able then to do your research. Can you respond more to that?
In terms of how we did the research? Or
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So all of us asked a lot of questions. Obviously, we wouldn't want to just say, are you a drinker? Yes, no. Like, there's a lot of detail there. So we were able to understand who was the current drinker based on any alcohol consumption in the last year. And then we were able to look at a question called Audit C, which is a standardized series of questions looking at high-risk alcohol consumption. So frequency of use, quantity of use, and if they had binge drinking, which is, drinking more than 1 serving at a single sitting on a typical day. So this is a standardized measure. All of us didn't create it. It's used across all the alcohol literature, but it tells us not just are you drinking, yes, no, but how much are you drinking, and is it potentially harmful drinking? I didn't design those questions for all of us. I was able to access those as a researcher, and then I used my colleagues in epidemiology, specifically at Washington University in St. Louis, to ask this question using their data. And we have great faith in the data because of how All of Us is implemented, that the responses were accurate and correct. And that allows us to draw conclusions that then lead us to further research.
When you say further research, can you just give us an idea what you mean by that?
Yeah, like for example, this asks some questions about, do these patients, are they going to have higher rates of recurrence of their cancer? Are they going to have lower rates potentially? What kind of insurance status do they have? Is there something we could use to target directed outreach? Are there reasons why people do or do not drink? So it just, science is iterative. I think we all learned this through COVID, that we sort of learn little things and then we add on it. And All of Us was really a great example of how lots of different researchers can use the same data set to create different hypotheses and answers, and then that will lead to more research.
You know, that is so important for our listeners. And I'm going to mention to them, if they're interested in joining the All of Us research program, they can call 414-955-2689, or you can go online to joinallofus.org and you can join as well. So that is really critical as far as how you can become and be a part of this big, large database. And I say that because it's the largest one in the world right now. So we are making headway in that area. One of the challenges that we do have is that we have people of color not joining at the rate we would like. And so that's the reason why we're on WNOV right now, because we're looking at how to get our listeners more involved in this program, because we need to be at the table, like Dr. Kevin Izzard mentioned, because we do not want to be on the menu.
Definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
So, Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you as far as talking about more of what you have done with Dr. LeConte and how you interact with her from UW, because she's there in Madison, even though it's
Yeah.
not that far. But yet and still, there's some really strong work that you are doing, integrating together.
Yes, there's UW Carbone Cancer Center specifically, and I can talk a little bit about the research that our researchers between UW Carbone Cancer Center and the Medical College of Wisconsin Cancer Center at Froedtert Park. Our goal is to eradicate cancer in the state of Wisconsin and beyond.
I love that. Eradicate means get rid of it, right?
Get rid of it.
Yes.
And Dr. LeConte and I, we both believe that the cure is between here and Madison.
Wow.
It's in Wisconsin,
I hope
because we've
so.
got incredible researchers that are doing so much work. And the beauty of the work is just what Dr. LeConte said. She asked questions and looked at questions and can narrow down to communities based upon what the All of Us study was, the program and the database that you all have. But her question is always, and other researchers that she's working with, we're looking at health equity. We're looking at community engagement. And I would say the work that Dr. LeConte, through her community outreach and engagement project that she's doing with the Wisconsin Cancer Collaborative, and the work that we're doing at the Medical College of Wisconsin, together we're combining to make sure that whether you are in urban populations, if you're in the city, if you're in a rural community, if you're in a tribal community, we're able to reach everyone, and nothing that we design is becoming cookie cutter. So like she mentioned, the research that she's doing is looking at, okay, so what outreach and engagement will work best with which population? She mentioned also with alcohol, with AA classes, it was designed by white men, did not have in mind women, period, persons of color, period. So there's been different programs that have changed because of research and understanding that in order to make this impact and have this impact, we got to have the community voice at the table. Part of the work that we're doing too, we have a couple of programs coming up. One will be in Milwaukee, hopefully at the new Thrive On King building, where my new office is, and another program that we're doing at Central Campus for the Medical College up near Green Bay. But both of them will look at multiple myeloma. And we are collaborating with UW Carbone to make sure that we have all the voices at the table, all the great minds at the table, to be able to answer questions that the community has. So we'll get more information to you about that. But I think one of the beautiful things that I really, really stress for our community to understand, you have two outstanding medical colleges right here in your own backyard. So when your kiddos are looking for opportunities, looking for programs, if they just want to get their feet wet to say, okay, do I want to go to medical school? We have two incredible programs. And one of the important things about one of many important things about Dr. LeConte, she is a professor. And as you heard her talk, she talked and mentioned the importance of culture, mentioned the importance of looking at diverse populations. We have researchers both at the Medical College and at Carbone that are in the classroom teaching these doctors and teaching the future doctors about being inclusive in the care that they give. So you don't have to go far to get that medical education. You don't have to go, and you don't always have to go to medical school. Let me be very clear. Dr. LeConte and other researchers like her, we need people of color that work in research labs. So you like a test tube? Let's go for it. You like working with mouse models? Let's go for it. And if you don't know what a mouse model is, you got to call and ask, and we'll tell you, we can arrange for tours. But the thing is that we have professors like Dr. LeConte who are in those classrooms, who can bring up the questions that may not be asked based upon culture and diversity of individuals. And in training future doctors, that is critical. In training future medical staff, that is critical. So having voices like Dr. LeConte's at the table. And also, I got to mention my boss, Dr. Stacy Young, at the Medical College of
definitely,
Wisconsin.
yeah.
Got to mention Dr. Young. Having those voices at the table makes a difference with how our students and how our future doctors will learn. So really encourage you as you are looking for summer. I know we're past the summer, but even in the fall, there's opportunities for med students, for high school students, for college students that are trying to figure out if this is what they want to do. There are opportunities both at UW-Carbone Cancer Center and the Medical College of Wisconsin where you can get your feet wet and understand and see, is this something that I want to do?
Deb, how can they reach you if they have questions related to the conversation today?
Definitely. Please feel free to give me a call, and I can and link you to UW-Carbone if you're in that area or if you have a
So
student
where
that's
is the
currently there.
Carbone area?
I apologize. UW-Carbone is based on UW-Madison campus.
All right. I want to make sure people know. So we're talking about Milwaukee area and Madison. So
and beyond.
Okay.
And beyond,
Yes,
because we have partnerships, and Dr. LeConte works a lot with federally qualified health centers.
Mhm.
And so so community health centers like the clinics that we have here in Milwaukee Health Services Inc., Progressive, Outreach Community Health Center, Gerald Ignace, 16th Street Community Health Center. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting anybody, but I think that's the ones we have. Dr. LeConte has done a lot of work with community health centers. So there's opportunities throughout the state. We are not limited to just Milwaukee or Madison. Our reach goes beyond that. But if you want to learn more about what we do, I can connect you to Dr. LeConte's version of me at Carbone. My number 414-955-2364.
Can you repeat that for
I
us?
sure can. I'll try to go slower. 414-955-2364. And please call me, contact me if you have anyone who's interested in medicine, anyone who's interested in med school or working in the healthcare field. One of the things that we often struggle with is finding team members or staff who are interested in working in the research.
Mhm.
And research, I do want to point out, like the All of Us Project, like the work that Dr. LeConte did, it is not only research that we are working directly with disease. We also like to do research that looks at behavior. And so you had Dr. Stali on before that looked at changing the way people eat and exercise. Dr. LeConte does work looking at, and Dr. Young does work looking at the social drivers or social determinants of health and the impact on healthcare access. So research that we need you to be a part of, and we want more people, more adults, more kiddos to look at going in as careers. It's not just working in a lab. Sometimes it's working out in the community, which I love doing. But sometimes it's working directly with people on one-on-one. So we need more faces, more people in the place who are interested in doing this type of work.
You know, Deb, you mentioned, and I want to make sure that our listeners really understand and know when you say health equity. Can you break it down so that way they get a clearer picture of what we're looking at here?
Yeah. And I don't know if Dr. LeConte has heard my version of
We can hear
health
hers
equity.
too, right?
I know this is one thing I was thinking of, and while looking at my multiple pairs of shoes that I have. So if I say everybody needs a shoe, and so I'm going to hand you, let's say, a size 7 stiletto. Now, not everybody can.
It won't work for me.
It won't work. It won't work for me. I don't know, Dr. LeConte. I don't know. I've seen her in some heels, but I don't know if a size 7 stiletto is what will work. So if I say everybody needs a
Will
shoe,
not.
will not. Okay, thank you. I'll remember that. But if I say everybody needs a shoe, so I'm gonna give everyone a size 7 stiletto, that's not gonna work. That is not gonna work for everybody. If I say I'm going to talk to you and find out what shoe would you like, what size would you like? Do you want a tennis shoe? Do you want like a general sneaker? Do you want a flat? If I ask you those questions and then go with you to look at different shoes, we try them on, then I'm providing equity.